Welcome, everyone, to the Salt Lake Expositor, where we have Randy and Megan and Jean discussing not everything, but a lot of things that have to do with the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so anyway, how you doing, Randy?
I am doing better than I deserve.
That's right, because last week you had a stiff neck and a concussion the next day or 2 days later.
Yeah, I got a little beat up, but I feel great now.
Yeah. Luckily, I've avoided the concussion, but I always have a stiff neck. So there you go. And Megan, nice to see you this Sunday afternoon.
Good to see you both as well. It's always good to be with you guys, and I'm ready to talk about what's happening out there in Mormon land.
Okay, the Salt Lake City Mormon church shooting is the number one thing to talk about. And Randy, you have something to share to introduce it?
Well, I think so. Let's go ahead and just take a quick look at the report.
I suppose we could be reading these for people that are on audio only.
Yeah.
100 law enforcement vehicles and helicopters.
Yeah, Randy, could we maybe mute the audio and read through just a summary of the incident so that people who are listening only, so that we can have a little summary?
Sure. Say that again, please.
So turn the sound down on that tab.
Oh, okay.
And then are you saying rerun it and we'll just read it and talk about it as it's going?
Right, either that or I don't know, Randy, if you have a summary of the incident that you can read or I can or whatever works. I just think people who are listening only aren't going to know what's going on.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, so in that YouTube tab, you can.
Well, there's pleasant news music to listen
to. Yeah. So, right, if you hover right into the picture, there'll be the sound in the bottom left of the.
Right. I'm just looking at the summary.
Oh well.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just turn the sound down on this. And we'll go like this. You guys ready?
Yeah, go ahead and play it again, and we'll read the what's going on, and we'll talk about it as we're going as well. Go ahead, Megan.
So this was a shooting outside in an LDS church in Salt Lake City. 2 people died and 6 others were injured at the scene. It occurred in the parking lot while there was a funeral going on inside. And it's kind of interesting, this ward in particular, this is mainly a ward of Pacific Islanders. And it said police said victims were all adults and the attack was not faith targeted. From what I heard from a police conference of the incident, it was between 2 people who knew each other. The authorities said the shooting was not random. No suspect is in custody. The two guys who did the shooting took off in a vehicle. They didn't have a great description of the vehicle. It says nearby residents reported hearing gunshots and seeing victims on the ground. Apparently, this particular building houses a ward that a lot of gang members attend. It says about 100 law enforcement vehicles and helicopters responded to the scene. One of the guys who was killed, stepped outside during the funeral, and then apparently these people drove up and there was an altercation that erupted into gunfire. So the church said it's cooperating with police and praying for those affected. And I don't know, Randy, from the other things that you posted and shared with us, I can say that what it looks like to me, and I could be completely wrong about this, but it looks like a lot of people wearing gang colors attend that congregation there. I'm not sure why the LDS Church, well, I do know why. The LDS Church has allowed gang members to basically kind of take over this congregation. When you see the videos panning across the crowd of this congregation, they're all wearing these blue gang colors and tattoos, and there's other gang paraphernalia there. And it's just wild to me how the LDS Church, they want people to be converted so badly. They want their tithing money so badly that they don't care if they're gang members. In fact, they probably are really proud of the fact that they have gang members who are reforming themselves. And from what I understand, one of the people who was killed was a former gang member who was trying to reform himself and help others get reformed. And I can imagine that, if he left the gang and he was speaking openly about the harm that they're doing, that could have resulted in this incident. Although it's speculation, it could have been totally wrong. But I just think it's crazy that the LDS Church would allow one of their congregations to be basically taken over by a gang.
That's right. All gangs are welcome, but not Exmos, like Randy.
Yeah, that's a questionable thing for me. I recently interviewed a woman who remembers being kicked out of the cultural hall because the instructor felt like her dress was a couple inches too short.
Right,
But-
and if she had a tattoo, she would be uninvited as well. But if a gang member who's male has a tattoo, then that maybe they just think he's trying to be reformed.
It's crazy. I've got several videos, and I'll line one of them up. But you've got these guys speaking at this service, and they're they've got a beer in their hand, and some of them are talking about being worthy to go on a mission. And others just get up there and tell it like it is, and everyone's drinking. And
Could
the
be
party
Martinelli's.
afterwards is just a big beer fest in the cultural hall of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What? How does the church allow that? But don't you dare be a transgender and walk in here. We'll follow you around. So I've got too many questions about this. I have watched dozens and dozens of videos, some of them family videos that I have recorded here, and no one has ever come out and said, here's why it happened. Because obviously people in the funeral, they all went outside. They knew something was coming down. I don't know if they knew this was going to happen. But this was like, no one has explained, well, there's rival gangs and so-and-so is doing it. He did it because he was angry at such and such. There's no explanation of that, and no explanation why people were all outside when as soon as the police and everything arrived, everyone was outside. How does that happen in an LDS chapel? Just curious. What leader said, yeah, you know, they're good people. We love the Tongans. Yeah, we've got a couple of gangs in town. Let's have one of them come, and this can be their headquarters, which it is, that chapel. So how does that work? Because you know, everything's got to be sacred and holy, right, to go in the church.
It's got to be in the church manual somewhere, Randy, if you want to know how it works.
Right.
Well, from what I've experienced in the past, when the LDS church, approves an activity to happen in the ward building, generally speaking, a member of the bishopric has to be there. The activity has to be approved. And, there are rules and guidelines around what can and can't happen in the church. For example, back in the 90s, I remember people wanting to hold their MLM meetings and stuff like that in the church. And, obviously the LDS church would say, no, you can't do that. And of course, if the deceased was a member of this LDS congregation, certainly they would be allowed to have their funeral there. But, if I can imagine, when I was attending church, if there was an activity and somebody had brought in alcohol, they would be asked to leave, or at the very least, they'd be asked to take the alcohol out. So I just don't understand how that would have happened unless the member of the bishopric that is in charge of opening up the building just said, let them go ahead and do it. Now, this particular video that you're going to show, Randy, this one I don't think is in a cultural hall. I could be wrong, but trying to look in the background to see what the rest of the building looked like, it did not look like an LDS cultural hall to me. For one, I didn't see any basketball paint on the floor. I didn't see any basketball hoops near the ceiling. And it actually kind of looks nice and a lot different than a cultural hall. I could be wrong, though. Everybody else watching, you let me know what you think.
I have several videos of the cultural hall because
Yeah.
you can see the chapel right through. But
Yeah.
take a look at this. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is not the cultural hall. Most of them are. But, let me just click on it here.
Mormon atheists, that's what I suspected, that if these people were going to church, I hope they were trying to get out of the gangs, and maybe that's why they got shot. That's what I was thinking as well.
The wooden beam up top there where they would slide a curtain or a divider.
To tell. I mean, the main thing for me is not seeing the basketball paint on the floor. That's what I was looking for. And what I can see through that doorway right there, that does not look like an LDS building, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe this is not.
And I can't tell if there's burlap on the walls either.
He's a great dancer, though. Yeah, there is no burlap on the wall as well.
Well, talk amongst yourselves. I'll pull up another video or two, but that just kind of gives you the feel of the group. And in the cultural hall where I know they were because it was during the service, you
And I'll
got
have
this
to
guy
say,
standing there with a beer in his hand, bearing his soul, but I can't say testimony. But
Yeah.
then there was another person who was talking about, staying worthy and going on a mission someday. He didn't strike me as the type that would go on a mission, but I'm judging a book by its cover, I think.
and here in the Bay Area, we've shared our ward with Polynesian wards. We've had a couple of different ones here and there. And we, enjoy their family commitment. We, honor that they show up for each other, and that there's a lot of love in their families, and there's a lot of, community aspects to what they do, and they're energetic, and it brings life into kind of an older ward building and some of the elderly people, the energy is a little bit too high for them and they get a little anxious or nervous. But overall, there's been lots of love and joy shared by them, and food, right? Food is important to them and to myself as well. And so yeah, but at some point you have to limit the extracurricular activities.
Well, that's a good point, Gene. They bring a lot to the community. I love the Tongan people. I love to see them dance and sing in their entertainment. A great place to see it is, of course, um, uh, in Hawaii at the
Multicultural Center, what do they call
yeah,
it?
yeah. But no, I've always loved the Tongan people, and I wouldn't want to screw with them, if I were a gang member, going against them, because they're very tough, strong people. But I think just the weirdness about the fact that that this all occurred and that it was at a church, that in and of itself is very strange. It's not fair. It's like you're going to show up at a funeral and off some people. That sounds mafioso to me. And and the fact that they were, having a funeral at the time, and now suddenly 2 more funerals are coming up, and it's just a tragedy all the way around. I don't know if it's rival gang members. I don't know if it's just some murderous thugs, but yeah, it's a dirty shame that it happened to anyone, let alone someone who's at a funeral in a church. So
Yeah, I want to just show a picture really quickly because somebody was asking about burlap on the walls. I can't put it on the stage since it's not my channel. So Randy, you'll have to share it. But yeah, so this is what a typical LDS cultural hall looks like. Those folding curtains in the back would have opened up to the chapel. You can see on the ceiling the basketball hoop retracts upwards, and then you can see the basketball paint on the floor. And then along the walls, these little panels are covered with burlap, and that's, I think, to kind of deaden the noise or the echo in that part of the building, because sometimes what they'll do is they'll open those curtains at the back when there's a larger event like a stake conference or something, so that they'll line the cultural hall with chairs so that people can sit back there when the chapel itself has overflowed and is full.
That'd be funny if the Burlap production company, all the major stockholders were apostles and their families. That'd be just funny.
Well, I mean, it's, Gene, probably one of the worst kept secrets in Mormonism that all of the contractors who build buildings and temples for the LDS church are themselves LDS. And in that way, it is very much a closed loop system where, if you're an LDS person in good standing and you own a construction company or a, whatever, you can get contracts to build the LDS buildings.
You know what sound I can't stand? If I ever see videos or have to go into a church during a sacrament meeting, is the crying of babies, the chattering of toddlers, the coughing that goes on. It's this steady background noise that is in every single meeting, except if you go to the singles ward. But I know that there are kids playing, and I understand that kids will be kids and you've got to cough and do all, but for some reason during the meeting, when there's a sacred moment going on at the microphone and there's a pause, what you hear, the rumbling, the noise, the coughing, I hate that sound. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me.
Towards the end, for me, it was like the only sound I liked about church.
Yeah, Randy, can't those moms just shut their kids up? What the hell is the matter with them?
Well, having raised 4 kids in the church, I totally get it. But I did, we watched our kids carefully. And if they did act up, we had to go outside and have okay, now I sound like a real Grinch.
That's right.
It's not
Baby
it's
cry
not
shaming for Randy
it's
right now.
not the babies crying. That's not because I don't like babies. I don't love babies, but it's, you know what? It's the echoey sound of all of the combination. It's this steady rumble throughout the meeting. It doesn't mean I hate babies. I'm just saying that sound drives me nuts. Hey, you know what? Maybe it's a phobia of mine, baby phobia.
There you go, Randy. That just goes to prove that if you have an opinion, somebody doesn't like it somewhere. So you always have to be careful.
Well, I always really
am.
struggled, bringing my 6 children to church by myself all the time. There was no way that I could always keep them quiet, but we always sat in the front, but right next to the exit door, so that, if I had to take one of them out, it was just literally 2 steps away. And a lot of times I would, leave a couple of my older kids sitting there on the bench while I took the younger ones out into the hallway. And I always, it was always a point of stress for me trying to keep them quiet, to the point where there were a couple of times when I just gave up and went home. So I have a lot of compassion for moms who are trying to keep their kids quiet during sacrament meeting.
We
Megan,
attended
Jesse
a
has
church.
message for you.
We
On the bottom.
attended a church in Tempe, Arizona, when I was a little kid, that had the regular chapel, and then up above there was a whole different room that had a big sheet of glass that had chairs and things, but that was for moms or dads with kids. They could go up and sit in there, and it was soundproof. So the congregation was rather quiet because they had somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Not doing that anymore, I guess.
Well, that's pretty rare. I've never actually seen that in any other chapel. I've seen it in the tabernacle, where there's like a tiny room. It's enough for maybe 2 moms and 3 or 4 kids, in the tabernacle on Temple Square. But I haven't seen that in regular congregations, in LDS congregations. There's a room where nursing mothers can go, but there are no windows and you can't see what's going on in the chapel, and they just have a piped in sound so that you can listen to it. But most chapels don't have that kind of a accommodation for people with crying kids.
It's the only one I've ever seen. And but it was an old chapel on the campus of BYU, or Arizona State University.
Yeah.
It was old. So, it's been torn down years ago, but I don't know. I thought that was a brilliant concept. But back to the
what else do we know about the shooting?
Well, sorry, I was
going
to say, Randy, one of the videos that you sent was of an individual who actually knew one of the victims, and I found that to be the most educational. So I don't know if you want to play that or if you have access to it.
Yeah, I sent it to you on our Expositor channel, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, talk amongst yourself. I'll find it.
Yeah. So, and I don't know. I think the next day there was a shooting of a policeman in Ogden. Was that related, in South Ogden or something?
It was not related, and originally I think Rebecca Biblioteca reported that was also at a church building, but it was not at a church building. It was in South Ogden that a couple was shot at, and when the police arrived, the shooter also shot at police, but it was not happening at an LDS church building. So it was totally unrelated to this incident. And
yeah, I do have video on that as well in the news story, but yeah, that was just some kind of domestic violence situation and got out of hand.
Chandra D is from Ogden. She says a mile from where that happened. And if you have any info, Chandra, we'd love to hear it, because I couldn't find a whole lot in the news on that yet. I also just want to acknowledge too, Davis brought up in the chat that there was a fire at a Jewish synagogue in Jackson, Mississippi. It's the largest synagogue in Jackson, and basically was burned to the ground, much like the LDS chapel in Michigan that happened a few months ago. So just, our thoughts should also be with these Jewish people who are obviously probably devastated about their synagogue being destroyed. It said that nobody was injured because the congregants were not present, but at the same time, it's a significant trauma to the Jewish community there. So my thoughts are with them also.
It's a horrible situation.
Yeah.
A lot going on right now. Also, I'm concerned for the safety and the comfort of the family of the victim, Miss Good, who was killed recently by the ICE agents. I think that's a tragedy in and of itself.
And Tim Rathbone is saying near an apartment building near a chapel. Well, I mean, you can throw a stone and hit a chapel in Ogden, Utah. So, near a chapel, probably within a couple of blocks of a chapel, just because there's a chapel every couple of blocks. But I don't think that it was intended to be an LDS target.
So apparently sometimes when I talk, it sounds robot-y. And
I was getting that, and that's why I hit refresh and it kicked me out. So
so I don't know if it's still happening, but
I don't
mind
sounds fine to me now.
I don't mind being compared to Stephen Hawking sometimes.
I get you two confused all the time.
Yeah. So I mean, Holly Cram, can we all just get along? I really don't understand why there's so much targeted violence against groups. There was the horrible shooting on Bondi Beach in Australia on the first night of Hanukkah that happened just a short time ago. I just really, it makes me so incredibly sad when people are targeted for what they believe. And even though, Jean and Randy and I all want to call out the harm that happens in the LDS church, we would never, ever advocate for violence of any kind towards any group of people, but especially not towards the LDS people. It's not the people that we have a problem with. It's the leadership. It's the policies that are doing harm to people. And, I would argue that even though there have been shootings and arson at LDS church, missionaries have died, the church leadership themselves has done irreparable harm to many, many of their own members.
Right.
And that's all we're trying to do is call out that harm so it can be changed and people can be protected.
It's not just the harm to the people that have left, that they are still harming the loved ones and that we all have that are still in the church.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some of them don't know, but it still is happening.
And to take a look back at the different shows we've had and the emphasis we've put on the need for higher security at the church. This is just another example. No one patrolling the parking lot, no one reporting strange activity. Anytime there's a function going on in the church, for hell's sake, come on. What? No security at the churches. That concerns me. And with all these things happening, they might say, hey, you know what? Yeah, maybe we'll get some security up.
When we grew up, just an opening prayer was enough security.
Paying your tithing too. So
right. But, God wouldn't let outside evil do any harm to people in church. But
Megan, was this the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and play this.
Please do.
I'm not getting the volume.
Were very close to me. A shooting occurred in Salt Lake City at a funeral of one of our family members, and two of the ones that were hit were very close to me. Rest in peace, Junior, aka Boney, and my boy Shone Batuve. Shona Watuwe was working on trying to become a content creator. We spoke many hours on the phone trying to angle his content in a way for him to help the youth, him to help people in Glendale, Utah that were struggling with gangs and addictions. He had served 12 years and he came out and started a family. And my heart goes out to my boy Junior that I grew up with, the city of Englewood, California, and my boy Shona Watuwe. Shona Watuwe was a shining light as a social media content creator. Someone that went through the trenches, someone that was brought up through the trenches, understood his mistakes and wanted to get back to his community and was gunned down in senseless gang violence. Love, thoughts, and prayers going out to my city of Englewood and my peoples from there, all the people that were affected by this senseless killing, and also my family and my friends from the city of Glendale, Utah. I spent many, many hours working with Shona Watuwe on some of the challenges that the kids in Salt Lake faced. And the kids in his neighborhood and the kids around Salt Lake, our Pacific Island, especially our Tongan community. Continue your work, the work that you were trying to push out goodness, to push out positivity in the community, especially your community of Glendale. Goes out to your family. My heart goes out to Junior's family. God grant us the ability to understand, even though none of this makes sense. Fly high with the angels tonight, my brothers. Big cup for you guys tonight, all night. They shooting.
There you have it.
So I just, Jessie Roblin was asking if her comments got bypassed. I didn't see what got shown or not, but she was saying that one person who got shot has a kid on a mission right now. Both wards in the building were Tongan, and the bishop is Tongan as well. So I don't know. It's really interesting. The LDS Church has a long history of, trying to convert Pacific Islanders. There are a lot of LDS people from the Tongan nation who've come to Salt Lake because they're gathering Israel. And so, it's interesting to me. What makes me sad is that the Tongan culture is already a beautiful culture with beautiful traditions. I don't like the idea of LDS missionaries going in and changing all of that, telling them that what they're doing is wrong and telling them that they have to move from their beautiful island nation to freaking Salt Lake City, Utah, which, has its beauties, mountains, whatever. But I just, it reminds me of colonization. And I really, really dislike the idea of taking a culture and whitewashing it in the name of converting people to Christianity when they already have their own spiritual traditions. Anyway, it makes me sad for the Tongan people who are basically told that their traditions are wrong, and also they have darker skin, and so they're going to be harmed by all of the rhetoric in the Book of Mormon about people with darker skin. So it just makes me sad.
I have to add this, Megan, that if it sounded like I was ranting and raving in the very beginning that they allow this in the cultural hall, I love the fact that if a bishop knew that this was going on and he allowed it, I love that. That's progressive. Bring everyone in. Did you ever see Sister Act with Whoopi Goldberg?
Yeah.
That's how she brought people in and got them going. So I don't mind that it's in chapel. I think that's cool as hell.
Yeah.
What I mind is the fact that they need to be more consistent and do that with all the boards. Let people in, have them come in. Let's enjoy this beautiful building that we have. And if they decide to get baptized, so be it.
So I wondered this too. Holly says, does he mean Glendale, Utah? That's a town of 333 in southern Utah. And he also said Inglewood.
Yeah,
some-
Inglewood, referring to Inglewood, California, which is where these gangs originated. So
Yeah.
to me, these are all gang references. Tim Rathbone is talking about a video, and I think the one that I shared here is the one he's talking about. So there's a Christian YouTuber who is a former police officer. He's a former gang squad. He was on the gang squad, in other words, and he talks a lot about this situation and how basically the gangs took over this congregation. I think it's interesting to listen to. I think he gets a little preachy about about some things, and I'm not a big fan of his rhetoric, but he makes some good points about the gangs taking over this congregation. So it might be worth it for us to at least watch a little bit of it.
Cool. Are you guys ready for me to put that up?
Sure, I can't add it, so he's not a police officer who's a gang member. He was on the gang deterrent squad. In other words, he was trained to deal with gang situations and gang violence.
You're able to control it though, Megan.
Yeah.
In Salt Lake City just a few days ago. This information.
There's the guy standing there with a beer, with a microphone in the cultural hall, and I can tell because of these plastic curtains. I've never seen those in any other place
Yeah,
other
right.
than LDS church, an LDS church. So,
And even the chairs. This is
Yeah.
all, that's right out of the Sunday School or Relief Society room.
yeah,
Information
That's
comes
the-
from a reliable source. You can actually check him out yourself. S2 Underground. He is on YouTube and he is on X, formerly known as Twitter. Now, he has provided reliable information in the past,
Basketball.
but with all third-party reporting, it should be treated as unconfirmed pending official statements. But I got to tell you, I have seen the chief of police give his statements, and he contradicts himself repeatedly in his statements. And it's obvious to me as a 30-year professional cop, including time as a gang team sergeant investigating gang crimes, that he is absolutely covering up information and not presenting it to the public. A lot of people say he's in with the gangs. He's not. Look, man, he is just a poor public speaker, and he is afraid to tell the truth because it shows that the police have lost control and that they're not doing their job properly. That's all there is to it. But let's get into this new information. Now, according to S2 Underground, the Salt Lake City shooting that occurred during a funeral service was not a random act and not ideologically motivated, which we speculated already, but was a result of ongoing conflict involving the Tongan Crip gang, or TCG. It is one of the more dominant gangs in Utah, and they have been a problem for some time. Now, the reporting claims that while the building is an LDS church, the specific ward has allegedly been used for some time as a community hub for TCG members with visible gang presence during services and events. Now, photo and video evidence from the night of the shooting reportedly shows individuals displaying gang colors, conducting informal security at entry points, wearing face coverings, consuming alcohol, and openly signaling affiliation. Now, this video here purportedly comes from just prior to the shooting. Now, you can see all the gang members surrounding the casket, saying goodbye to their homie, but they are all wearing visible gang colors and gang paraphernalia. The same video that's been posted online, fast forward after the shooting, you can see a notable decrease in gang members because they've either been shot or they're running away from the crime. But there are still gang members present within the church as police respond and deal with the shooting and take statements from the people inside. Now, there are additional claims that include that the services at that location, at that church, are conducted exclusively in the Tongan language, and that the deceased individual whose funeral was being held was allegedly an active Crips member, and that's according to statements attributed to his widow. Now, if this is accurate, the information would further support the assessment that this was a gang-related shooting and not an attack against the LDS Church as a religious institution. It would also raise serious concerns about situational awareness, risk tolerance, and long-term criminal influence over specific location. Now, at this time, law enforcement has not publicly confirmed gang involvement, despite the gang unit reportedly leading the investigation. The two suspects still remain at large. Now, scripture is clear that the church is set apart for worship, repentance, and the teaching of God's word. It's not a place for criminal activity, intimidation, or for the projection of violence. Jesus himself drew a firm line when corruption entered the house of God. In Matthew chapter 21, verse 13, he says, "My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers." That rebuke was not about excluding sinners. It was about refusing to allow sin to be normalized or empowered inside the temple. Look here, you have a man wearing gang colors, drinking alcohol on the stage in front of everybody in what is supposed to be a church. Now, the Bible makes a clear distinction between welcoming those who seek repentance and tolerating behavior that brings harm to others. In 1 Corinthians.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop it there because, he goes on to talk about the idea that, as a Christian person, and when he was a pastor, he would welcome gang members into his congregation. But if they were wearing gang colors, he would tell them, you have to leave that outside because you're practicing idolatry. You're worshiping the gang rather than bringing this into the church. But I just want to say it's a little bit ironic that he's talking about, tolerating behavior that causes harm to others. And if there is anything that the LDS Church does, it is tolerating behavior that causes harm to others. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that.
Right.
That's what really stood out to me in that video.
You have a weekly report that's going to address that very behavior. And I'll also say gang colors. I was about to say go BYU during that. I mean, but there's also Utah, University of Utah is red. So red and blue are pretty much gang colors a lot of different places. And that's exactly what they experience during sports seasons.
I wanted to ask you, Gene, and you, Miss Megan, if you, in your opinion, is there a liability on the part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Well, there should be. In my opinion, if they're allowing known gang members to worship in their congregations and to hold, and as Jesse Roblin is pointing out, this was a viewing. The funeral was supposed to be in LA where the person, the deceased, was from. And thank you for all the information you're putting there in the chat, Jesse. I appreciate that. But yeah, if the LDS Church is allowing gang members to worship in their congregation and there's a large collection of them, that's a huge liability, especially if they're allowing them to dress in gang clothing and consume alcohol on LDS Church property. And there is a GoFundMe for one of the young men who was shot in this incident. But in my opinion, the LDS Church should be held liable for this. They should be sued for this. This shooting occurred on church property, and it happened because the LDS Church was allowing gang members to hold events in their building. That is a huge liability, and it's not something that should ever happen.
It sounds like they had gang
zero
members
security in place.
I was going to say the gang members were operating as security. That's what that one report said.
Well, yeah, I mean, so when he's saying
Informally.
conducting low-level security, that means they probably had a couple of gang members standing near the door, making sure that no opposing gang members were coming in. Not that they were actually doing pat downs or had a metal detector or that they were actually trying to protect or police anybody. And one of the biggest complaints ever since the shooting and fire that happened at the LDS Church in Michigan is that the LDS Church has no intention of beefing up the security at any of their buildings. They're not going to do any kind of magnetic locks. They're not going to do any kind of coded doors. They're not going to have security at the door. They're just going to continue to allow anybody to come in. And they're not going to allow members to carry firearms, even if they're licensed, in the church buildings. And so that's a huge liability and a huge vulnerability, in my opinion.
Mayflower Kid, they might not do it out of the goodness of paying, of reparating to victims, but if the victims sue them, they might pay off in order for them to keep quiet.
Yep.
Well, this is a great segue into a different story if you're ready. But what Megan did, was it you that said you wanted to update the case with the boy that got his foot cut off?
Oh, yeah, but I don't have that one up. So give me just a second.
Sure. Yeah.
If you want
just as
to
an info,
talk about this for 1 second, Just Call Me Kim had a question about if anybody got arrested or if there were multiple shooters. Do you guys know the answer to that?
there's been nothing put out. I look at all the stories that come out with the name Mormon or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I haven't seen an update yet.
All I heard is that, they didn't have any of them, and nobody was in custody at this point.
Yeah, scary. Yeah, so
Refresh everybody, Randy, with what the boating accident was.
sure. If you don't know the story, just briefly, there was an activity. One of the wards in the church had a boating activity uh, for the youth, and this this pair of brothers were in the activity, and the youngest one of the two, and I believe he was 12, was it?
Hmm.
Jumped in, and he was in the water, and the anchor was down, and his foot, the rope actually wrapped around his foot when they were placing it down, and one of the young ladies that was driving a boat for some reason accelerated rapidly, and that pulled the rope, and the boy's foot was amputated at the ankle. So they're they presented a lawsuit against the church for negligence, for all these different things. And if in my opinion, if I were the church, I would pay that instantly with an apology and say, hey, we know the young girl wasn't instructed on this, and yeah, it's going to come out that they had no safety instruction and blah blah blah. I know, working at Disney, if that happened at Disney, Disney would pay to have a robotic foot placed on that guy, because they would instantly take care of it, keep it out of the press, make sure they're happy.
And they would include new training and procedures, right?
Yeah,
For
implement
things, for more safety.
procedures. Yeah, exactly.
That's right. So somehow Megan got kicked out of the studio again, and it wasn't me. Although we are running this on Randy's channel, and as you can see, it's from the depths of hell.
I kicked her out.
You did,
I
because
said,
you were getting rid of the one thing.
yeah, I said, absolutely not. Did you just commit Harry Carey?
If
Megan,
you guys don't, if you don't want me in the show, just say that.
None of us touched
Right.
anything.
Megan has been to hell and back now.
It's Momo. I'm sorry, Momo Nomo, my little guy sitting up in the corner there. Anyway, were you
I
able
keep
to pull
laughing
up
at
the
the
story you
at the
wanted to find,
flames.
Megan?
I do,
Did
but
you
I don't know if
find
you guys can hear me or not.
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so I pulled it up, but you'll have to share it. I don't have the controls on that one.
You got it?
Okay.
So that was a good summary, Randy, of the case, that these two kids were at a boating activity, and this unfortunate incident happened where this 12-year-old boy lost his foot, and his 14-year-old brother, so they were 12 and 14 at the time, had to actually perform life-saving measures on his own brother, which I imagine was incredibly traumatic. But this last Monday, the LDS Church filed their response to the lawsuit, admitting that some of its youth activities involve water sports. Okay, that's a great admission. Like, we all know that that's the case.
Right.
They admitted that the driver of the boat is in charge of some youth activities, but it denied that it breached any of its obligations or legal responsibilities, which is kind of the MO of the LDS Church, to say, like, it wasn't our fault. We weren't liable for that. We didn't breach of any of our obligations. They admitted that the adults who organized the activity were leaders within the church. However, they denied that the young women's leader had increased the danger of boating, or that any injuries sustained were the result of acts, errors, or omissions by the church. However, I just want to point out the fact that they're allowing these young men and young women leaders to take youth on activities when this young women's leader, from what the lawsuit alleges, had no training or experience in driving a boat, and therefore should not have been put in charge of driving a boat where young people were potentially at risk. So it goes on to say that based on Wyoming's law, this is where this took place, was in Wyoming. Based on Wyoming's law due care requirements, the church admitted it owed a duty of care to the minors, but denied allegations that it breached that duty. So they are obviously arguing that they bear no responsibility. There are inherent risks of activities like water sports. The church can't prevent that. They also argued that the plaintiff's claims were barred by the volunteer immunity doctrine, which provides certain protections to individuals acting as volunteers. And it said, quote, the injuries are the result of a rare and unforeseen accident that happened in the absence of negligence or lack of due care by the defendant. It also says the church, quote, prays the plaintiff take nothing by way of the complaint and ask the court to grant the defendant, which is the church, any relief that the court deems equitable. So the church is asking the court to grant relief to the defendant for being sued in this case.
Oh, brother. So basically, the church is saying, tough titty, kitty. We don't care. You get used to walking on one leg. Wow. Why does Megan keep disappearing?
And the church might say, you know, it doesn't really matter if he's missing a leg now. It'll be restored in heaven.
Right. It's just ridiculous.
Maybe they can donate all their money now to the poor and it'll be restored in heaven as well.
That may be a hardship on that family financially for the rest of their lives. And definitely, can you imagine the effects of seeing your brother's foot amputated and having to help to save his life? That will last with both of those boys forever. And why? Because some girl who was untrained on a boat decides to accelerate and go. And it'll probably affect her forever too.
So the Mormon atheist has a point here. In most places, you don't need a license to drive a boat. In most places, you can even rent a boat if you just have a driver's license. And so, therefore, it's questionable as to, whether there was liability. You don't need experience at all. It's totally legal. Yes, that's all true, which would have been fine if it was her own children. But she was acting in the capacity as a leader, as a youth leader at a church activity. And if you're in charge of other people's children, there is a duty of care there. Of course, the church denies that they were negligent in that duty of care of this child. However, look, it's like you say, Randy, if this happened on Disney property and a Disney employee were in charge, or whatever, the Disney would buy a new foot for this kid, get him a robotic foot, take care of his medical expenses, all of that's the right thing to do. The right thing to do is if an activity happens on your property or while somebody's in the care of one of your participants, you should take care of them. That's the right thing to do. And the church certainly has the resources to do that. But God, it's like prying the fingers off of a money bag that belonged to Ebenezer Scrooge,
Right.
And I agree. Mayflower Kid says the girl driving the boat is a victim too. Yeah, because she's asked to be put in charge of one of these youth activities, given no training on how to drive a boat, and then she's held responsible for this stuff. Like, that's traumatic for her as well. I can't imagine how she must be feeling to be responsible for a kid losing his foot. That's awful. The church should be paying for therapy for all of these people.
I have no doubt that the church will bend the responsibility onto that girl driving the boat. They'll say, well, it's not our liability, but this girl is the one that should be sued, which is not, I'm not speaking in my opinion. I'm saying what I could see the church saying.
Yeah.
They deny all responsibility, and they do it in the name of the almighty dollar.
Yeah, and
you can leave the boat, but you can't leave it alone.
And as Trevor's pointing out, the church wants their legal fees paid by the family, which is absolutely ridiculous and unconscionable in my opinion.
Amen.
Yes, it's really difficult to listen to things when a religion or any organization that professes goodness acts in a way that is anything but.
Well, what would Jesus do? You know, wear one of those bands, WWJD. What would
Jesus,
Christ do? Well, he'd heal the
Jesus,
foot back on there.
Jesus must have been a hell of a money launderer. That's all I'll say. Because the
I'm
church
just
is
saying
patterning
that
themselves after him.
there is nothing Christ-like about the church putting this on the family and making them pay the medical bills instead
Yeah,
of taking care of it.
remember how there was an LDS church leader who told us that if we didn't like the policies that the church was putting out, instead of saying the church, that we should say Jesus instead. I don't like
Well,
Jesus's
a man
policy.
said it, I think.
Who was it?
One of the 70. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Tim Rathbone should remember it, but he's old, so I don't know.
Yeah, so I just would like to say I don't like the way that Jesus is treating this kid who lost his foot. And I think that Jesus should, you know, number one, heal the kid and get his foot to come back. And number two, they should take care of the family. So I don't like the way the church is handling this, but the church has told us to act as though it's Jesus who is doing all of these things. So can you imagine, if a family came to Jesus and said, look, while we were, worshiping at the synagogue, a rock fell and, lamed my son and his foot was destroyed. Jesus would say, you know what, that's really not my fault. And, you've bothered me from taking my time away from preaching. So I think you should compensate me for that time that I've taken away from preaching to answer your complaint.
Yeah, it's very Christ-like. Unbeat, freaking believable. And this isn't the first time, I'm sure, and it sure as hell won't be the last time. But this is just an example of the greed by the church, the greed and the attraction to the almighty dollar. They'll use the members' money to invest and build their funds, but they won't help the members when they're in need. In a situation like this, what the hell?
Well, I think there's this inherent fear among the church leadership, especially the top leadership, that, well, if we compensate this young man for losing his foot, we're going to have to start compensating everybody who had an injury at a church activity. Yep. And that's the way it should be. And
Yep.
so the hell what? You have so much freaking money, you don't know what to do with it. And not only that, but now that you have literally hundreds of billions of dollars, it's going to grow exponentially. And it's going to be $1 trillion church within the next 5 to 10 years. And so you do have enough money to compensate literally every single person who has been harmed or injured by the church. And you would still have plenty of rainy day money left for Jesus's slush fund. So
You get an amen
makes me
from
angry.
Tim.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that.
Megan's shirt matches her mic.
Yes, and somebody commented at one point that I look like I belong in jail with this shirt. And, if I'm guilty of the crime of calling out the LDS church for their BS, then put me away forever.
Or at McDonald's as the hamburglar.
Ironically, I am making hamburgers for dinner.
That you were making those last week too.
I know, it's a Sunday tradition. I think that's what's happening.
Beautiful.
Sunday hamburger day.
Is there any update from the woman that skipped country with her 4 children?
Unfortunately, no. There have been no sightings. I actually checked on that earlier today, and nobody has reported seeing, her or her children. The last time they were seen was getting on the plane in Salt Lake City. So I do have a floodlit update if we want to cover that, but since I've been kicked out of the studio every time somebody shares something, I put the link in chat, Randy. If you want to click it from your side, maybe that will prevent me from getting removed.
Okay. Is that what it is?
I don't know. I'm
the private
speculating
chat?
that it could be it. Yeah.
You see where the private chat is, Randy, on the bottom right?
Yeah, I'll
You're clicking on it.
yeah, don't pressure me, guys.
That's right.
I get all
can only press
flustered.
one button at a time.
Well, I'm in private chat, but I see nothing.
Mayflower Kid wants to know how many lawyers get into the Quorum of the 12. Well, the current president of the Corporation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is an attorney, and I believe there's one other. But the church employs the firm of Curtin McConkie, and I'm fairly certain the LDS Church keeps that firm running in the millions of dollars every year, possibly even 8 figures a year to that firm, defending all of their lawsuits that come against them, and also filing plenty of lawsuits against anybody who has anything, you know,
Curtin McConkie is like the
opposing
16th,
church.
like they're like the 16th apostle.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is the picture of Alan Roman Andrus. He was a former Mormon bishop in Placerville, California. He was a bishop from at least 2005 to 2007 in the El Dorado Hills ward of the El Dorado stake. And in 2020, he was arrested and accused of drugging and SAing a woman in 2019. He was found guilty by a jury in last year, 2025, of one misdemeanor count of simple battery. And it's just wild to me that that's the only charge he's convicted of if he's accused of drugging someone and essaying them. But anyway,
It's far
there
from
is a-
simple. It's very complicated.
yeah. There is also a civil lawsuit against him that is ongoing, but he's awaiting sentencing as far as I'm aware. But this again just came out on January 8th of this year, and it seems like a week cannot go by when we have something like this happen. And here's a particularly horrible quote from a phone call that was recorded by the alleged victim. It says, "You know what's great is I can't wait until the Ambien kicks in, because then you do what I say. If I say you dance with a pencil, you're going to dance with a pencil. It would be like if someone spiked your drink, you didn't know you were drinking alcohol, so there's no sin."
I thought you were going to say, I can't wait for the sacrament because then there's no sin as well.
Crazy.
Yeah, so he was found guilty of misdemeanor simple battery. He was acquitted of the felony charges brought against him, which is kind of gross to me. Anyway.
That's right. And for the people in California, we pronounce that Placerville because placer has something to do with the gold rush.
Got it. Sorry about that mispronunciation there.
Well, thank you for that, Megan.
Yes.
You know, we it's sad, but every week we have to take our choice or make our choice of what SA case we want to present, because there's multiple coming down on a weekly basis. And, you know, the problem is completely out of hand. And I don't know if any steps are being taken by the church. Do you two know of any improvements that are made? Have they implemented anything to start vetting the leaders, teaching, training?
No, they haven't. And here's the issue in my mind is that, you know, they are they're very public when they make a policy change. They announce it in their church newsroom, and they're usually very proud of their policy changes, but there haven't been any announcements about their policy changes with regard to this. And the LDS Church, as we know, has virtually unlimited resources, but they refuse to implement even the most basic policies that would protect children and other people from being abused by their leaders and their members. They'll spend countless time and resources to implement policies that shame LGBTQ people, but they won't do something as simple as implementing background checks for their church leadership. Even if you don't have to background check everybody in the congregation, but you do have to background check the people who are leading your congregations and the people who are working with children. they could spend their time and their money and their resources training leaders on how to spot predatory behavior. They could make all of their volunteers mandated reporters, but instead they'd rather spend money defending themselves in court against victims when they bring these civil suits against the church, trying to hold them accountable. So they make it very clear what their priorities are by who they sue and who they defend themselves against, and by, the tiny amount of claims that they do pay out. When they think that a court case is going to get to the discovery phase, then they make an offer to pay off these victims because they don't ever want to get to discovery, because that would be incredibly damaging to the church.
What if they had calling, and in that calling they put, let's say, someone who's responsible and knowledgeable and dependable to teach every time someone's called. The very first Sunday, they are taught by this woman the basics of teaching, the basics of proper behavior around children, what to do, what not to do, and just have this lesson for every teacher, so that's the beginning, and let them know, hey, we're watching you, we're keeping an eye on you.
Yeah,
Even
that
just that slight training would be such a huge help, because they'll think, oh, well, they're kind of watching out for this stuff, so maybe I won't be forward with this 12-year-old boy. Just a thought.
or at least they would, they would maybe pick a different congregation or something where they knew they weren't being watched. But Hallie Cram 9631 is asking, what about the background checks in the UK? Well, the UK as a nation has made it mandatory for religious institutions to conduct background checks. So in any place where the LDS Church is legally obligated to do these things, they will do it. And in many states, clergy are mandated reporters, but not in every state in the United States. What I'm saying is that regardless of what the law is, the LDS Church should make this a policy within their church worldwide, because that's what would protect children the most. But instead, they only do it where they're obligated to do it, because it takes time and resources.
It'd be funny if, due to transparency or some sort of discovery, it was found out that there was a memo where they cite part of their ongoing security is allowing apostates to leave, because the apostates are the troublemakers. They're the ones that do all the bad things. They never believed anyway. They never had a testimony. And so as those people leave, the church gets better and better.
Well, they also believe that they have the power of discernment. So they think that, the bishop, when the bishop is calling somebody to preside over the youth organization, they think the bishop has discernment and can tell if that person is going to harm youth. But that is obviously not the case, due to the fact that it happens all the time. DSA in the LDS Church is far more rampant than it was in the Catholic Church when that scandal broke. And people are just now accumulating the number of stories. More and more are coming out. And I'm grateful that more victims are coming forward and trying to hold the church accountable, because it empowers other victims to do the same. And I hope that we continue to hear more from these victims who've been silenced all these years.
Amen. Well,
I was going to say something else, but Randy's making me dizzy with his camera that goes.
I know. Right? I don't know what's going on there. It's like
you have face tracking on, so when you turn to the side, the camera follows you.
No, but I mean, I'm just sitting here listening, and all of a sudden I'm moving backwards and forwards. It's because there's a spirit or a ghost behind me that the camera's picking up.
Right.
Normally I would be joking, but just saying. Well, go ahead, Gene, with your comment.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I can't remember. It had something to do with either the lawyers or the criminality of the church. Maybe it'll come to me in a little bit.
Well, and I think it's important for all of the listeners and everyone who experiences something where they see something or suspect something or experience something. Don't call the bishop. Don't call the stake president. Call the police.
Well, I know what I was going to say. I ring gave a talk about how even if the church calls somebody bad, we'll say, to be a bishop or something else where they commit crimes, it was still the right thing to do because, you know, all these things somehow are part of people's challenges, right, Megan?
Yeah, we
Right,
agreed in the
part of yours?
pre-existence. Yeah, in the pre-existence, we agreed to be S8 as children. So, it's just part of God's plan for us. That's sarcastic, by the way, for those of you who couldn't tell.
Right. Let's see. So there's any other news?
No, I just want to say, as always, the reason that we are reporting on and exposing these crimes in the LDS Church is to help protect children and to help victims feel empowered to come forward and to talk about it. And, I just always want to advocate for, as we say, see something, say something. Pedophilia is not a sin, it is a crime. SA against children is not a sin, it is a crime, and it should be reported to the proper authorities. Please don't talk to your bishop. Please just call 911.
Or as Trevor says, call the bishop, but record it. So that when they sweep it under the rug, we have evidence.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe call 911 first and then call the bishop and record it. that would be mine.
And then go to floodlit.org.
Yes.
And,
Yes, please do visit floodlit.org. Please do donate to them. They do incredible work to bring all of these cases to light. And I greatly appreciate the work that they are doing out there. I'm grateful to have that as a resource because, it's incredibly difficult to get information about these cases because the LDS Church does a really good job of scrubbing the internet. They have people who are literally employed full time to find news stories that are detrimental to the reputation of the church and to either scrub them or to pressure the news outlets to remove or distance the LDS Church from the reporting. They're very good at search engine optimization. And so if you ever Google any subject that is negative about the LDS Church, the first few hits that you get are usually going to be from the official church website, either debunking or downplaying what's going on. So please do your research, reach out there to find good resources, and don't fall for their BS.
And floodlit.org is shining the light in the darkest corners of the church, we'll say.
Yeah.
that was very profound, Gene. Did you just come up with that?
I did.
That was really good. I think that, you know what? That's going to make the reels right there, the short. I love that.
Did you know you can just say clip that and then StreamYard will clip it for you in a short?
I know. I've heard that. Like if I said it right now,
Yeah.
clip that.
It'll do the previous 30 seconds.
And then you can edit it, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you guys as always for helping to shed light on harm that the LDS Church does. I appreciate you guys. And thanks to everybody in the chat for being here and watching today.
We are grateful for every one of you, and we appreciate your attendance. We'd love it if you'd share this video with anyone who may ever come in contact with, SA. What I'm trying to say is it's for everyone. Everyone needs to see this on a weekly basis. So what I'm trying to say is hit like, subscribe to Momo Nomo, to Latter Daily Digest, and to Third_Verse.
That's right.
And then we're
Right.
heading to the Grateful Dead concert.
That's right.
Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to like on your way out.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.